everyone, welcome to this week's Nature Bites, and in case you hadn't noticed, we have gone on a bit of a field trip today. So if you are normally joining us for our Michigan Nature Bites, then you might be thinking, wonder what's going on today. So hey, my name is Evan. I'm the host of Michigan Nature Bites at the Hell Nature Center, and this week we are actually taking you all on a bit of a field trip. So today, we hinted at it a little bit in our description, but we're going to be talking a bit about what animals in our park eat. So if you've never been here before, then we have about 70 permanent residents that live with us full time. And those are different than our rehab animals. And so those animals have a very strict diet that we work on with them as well. So what I've got today is I actually have 3 different diets that I have prepared for our residents that it's what, and we'll talk a little bit about what makes them as well. But then we're going to actually show you what it looks like to feed those animals as well. So I'm going to flip the camera around here. All right, so that's Odie. We're going to meet him in just a second. But I have 3 diets here. And one for our coyote, who we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But our first one we're going to talk about is actually our deer. So this is a standard deer diet for us, and because we have a really dedicated team, they've actually given them the majority of their diet, so don't worry, this is not going to be all of the food for just our deer. But deer are herbivores, which means that they need a whole mix of different plant material. So we've got things like cracked corn, so this is just a good nutritious form for them to eat. And then we've got some carrots, as well as some different colored tomatoes. Now, we get our food, our produce donated from a local grocery store, so we get some pretty exciting things, including sometimes these very exotic looking tomatoes as well. So along with that, they're gonna get some nice greens, because in the wild they'd be eating some leafy bits as well, and then they'll get some fruit. So we're gonna go on in, and I'm gonna put on some leather gloves, so I want to make sure that I am keeping myself safe, because even though they are not omnivores, I still want to make sure that I'm not getting my fingers bit. So Odie and Easy, if you've never been here and never met them before, are 2 deer that have come to us after being too friendly towards people. So I'm sorry, I'm going to give you all a shot of our fence for just a second. Okay. I only have so many hands. It's a little challenging sometimes to work the camera and do the show. All right. So I am here with Odie, who was actually deer napped from the wild, and he was taken and kept in somebody's bathtub where he was not fed a healthy diet for a deer. He was fed essentially the equivalent of cream of wheat. So really for Odie, not a healthy diet, not like what we feed him here at the Nature Center. So here in our deer habitat, they are given these bowls of food, and we'll watch him eat for just a second. We'll see if we can get some close-ups. Now, please, please, please do not get this close to deer in the wild. They are wild animals and do not appreciate being approached. And part of the reason that we have issues with people bringing deer into our rehab clinic is that they get too accustomed to taking food from people. So while we are feeding them, please, we ask that you all refrain from feeding them out in the wild. So Odie is perfectly comfortable with me being this close and personal while he eats, but wild deer, probably not so much. Our other slightly more elusive deer over there is Easy. And Easy was actually so small when he was born that he did need to be hand-reared by our team. And because he was hand-reared, it ended up that he never quite developed the proper fear of people. Now, one cool thing I want to point out is we actually give them branches this time of year, which they will gnaw on. So this isn't their main source of their food, but they will eat the outer part of these branches called the cambium, where they can actually get nutrients for them. And this is very common for deer to do in the winter, because there aren't these nice little bowls of food that people leave around. They've got to work a little bit harder for their food over the winter time. Now, the last little part of their diet is going to be a nice source of hay. So hay is this green stuff, and it's different than straw, which is this yellow stuff, because it gives them the equivalent of if they were to eat grass. So we make sure that this stays nice and stocked all winter long for them. Now they do have a nice big water bucket all the way over there in the corner. They have a nice trough. So we're not actually going to change the water in this habitat, but that is a standard part of taking care of these wildlife. Now I'm going to flip it back over so you can see my face. Hello. Great to see you all again. Now we're going to shut this habitat and we're going to move on to our coyote. Now Kayla the coyote is what we call an omnivore. Now one quick thing I want to say about deer is that there are some people that'll tell me, well, I've heard that deer actually eat meat. And there are some cases where a deer has been found on a trail cam having consumed some sort of meat product, whether that's another carcass or something like that. And, you know, if food is hard to find and you found a nice, tasty carcass on the ground, I guess it's pretty opportunistic. So deer, mostly herbivores, sometimes an opportunistic omnivore. But our coyotes are true omnivores, and they find most of their food through catching prey items, things like, you know, small mice, rabbits, and other things that they can get their hands on. But they also will snack on things like mushrooms and nuts and other berries that they might find. Now I'm going to flip your camera around so you can see Kayla, or when she decides to come on out. But one thing that's special about how we feed Kayla is that we absolutely have to make sure that she is protected along with us. So one of the ways that we do that, it's called a double containment system. And so what we do is we drop what we call a guillotine in the zookeeping business, but don't worry, we're not chopping off any heads. But basically that means that I now have a completely separate space that I can feed her in, because she is a rabies vector species, which means that if I were to be bitten or scratched by Kayla, then she would actually have to be euthanized to be tested to see if she has rabies and if I could potentially have rabies. So for her, we want to make sure that we're keeping her as safe as possible by making sure that we aren't making it so that she can get to us. Now, before we go in there, we're going to take a look at her diet. So because she's an omnivore, it's really nice to just go ahead and feed her dry dog food as part of it. And that's because dry dog food is already formulated for healthy dog diets. So it's got all of those potentially vegetable or fruit matter that you might need as well. Now we throw some wet dog food in there to make it so that it's a little bit more tasty and gonna get that kind of visceral feeling. And then she gets some sort of prey item. So today she's getting a little bit of smelt, which are just, you know, we defrost them and put them in there, but she can also get things like chicks, as well as something like a small rodent that we get from a supplier. So we're gonna take her food in there, and she's definitely sleeping right now because I do not see Miss Kayla popping her head out. And in case you're wondering, it's a little chilly here in Michigan today. We're getting ready for a cold snap. So all of our animals are kind of hunkering down as we get ready for that, those temperatures to start plummeting. So chances are she's holed up somewhere nice and safe. So for those of you that are just joining me, like I said, when we deal with our carnivores or animals that are rabies vector species, we always separate ourselves from them before we actively go in with them. Because even though Kayla was raised by people and that's part of her injury, that's why she's here, we really don't want to give her the opportunity to potentially hurt one of us, because then it would mean that we would have to, we would be failing as our job as zookeepers to keep her safe. So there is Miss Kayla. And like I said, we'd be changing the water dishes if we were the actual keeper coming through today. But I'm going to switch my camera back around. All right, so we're going to walk down to our beaver habitat. And while we're walking, because it's going to take a little bit, do you all have any questions so far about how we are going? Oh, we had a question about what is Kayla? So Kayla is a coyote. And like I said a little bit ago, she is not coming out. So I think that she is a little on the sleepy side today, but I will go over to her sign and we can take a look at Kayla if we were to look at her sign. So if you've never seen a coyote before, they're not very large. They're about the size of a 35-pound dog, but she is somewhere sleeping nice and safe in one of her dens. So while we walk over to our beaver, what questions do you all have about what it's like to take care of these animals and to feed them? So we've met an herbivore in our deer, we've met an omnivore in Kayla, and we're about to go meet another omnivore in our beavers. Now we have two beavers, Willow and Teddy, and they are going to be eating a lot of different things out in the wild. And so we have to get a little creative with how we feed them. So if I were a beaver out in the wild, I would be looking for things like trees. And it is true that beavers chew down trees. They use those big front teeth to take them down. And that's how we know that they're a rodent. So rodents have two really large front incisors that they use to chew through things. And beavers don't just build houses out of those trees, and then they will use them to actually eat the outside of them, kind of like we saw with the deer. So we had somebody ask, how many times a day do we feed the animals? Now it depends on the animal. Some of our animals we can feed once a day and they'll kind of self-feed as we get throughout the day. Or we have some animals that their metabolisms require us to feed them multiple times a day. Or if we're medicating them, then they might need to eat in the morning and eat in the afternoon. So that's one of those things that we have to consider as well. And so we've got a couple, are they on different feeding schedules? They are, and including the fact that we have to feed our owls at a different time than we feed our daytime animals, because owls don't come out until the evening. And so it takes a little bit of time for them to kind of warm up to eating food in the winter, and we don't want their food to freeze before they get to it. Now we're about to go meet our beavers. And while we do that, we do have somebody asking, how are Vincent and Alvin doing? Alvin and Vincent, our two flying squirrels, are doing absolutely wonderful. They're nice and toasty for the winter, but they aren't going to be really easy to see right now because they're a little chilly. So they're going to stay nice and warm in their house. So we're going to flip it around. We're going to talk about our beaver diet. So very, very similar to our deer. We've got some fruit in our apples and some carrots, as well as some of those, like I said, those really colorful tomatoes that we saw earlier, as well as some lettuce. But then if we move everything aside, we're going to see these little pellets. And these are called wild herbivore because it's, we can't really always accommodate every single amount of food that they would be getting out in the wild. So what we do is they do get trees, so they do get trees to chew on, but they also get these herbivore pellets so that they can still get that nutrients that they would be getting from all of that woody plant matter. Now we're gonna go meet them in their house today. And so give me just a second while I put my gloves back on and unlock their door. Now, you all are going on this journey with me because I'm part of our staff here. But if you're not part of our staff, please remember to stay behind our fences and to watch them from a distance. We don't want you getting hurt or our animals getting hurt because of the fact that, somebody from the public might have accidentally done something that they weren't supposed to. So, thank you all for allowing me to show you this, but please respect the boundaries and make sure that you are staying on the side of the fence that you are supposed to. So I'm going to flip this around. And the first thing you might notice is that they have built themselves a nice little tunnel into their straw. So Willow and Teddy have made themselves a nice den, and you can see kind of some of those trees that they have planted in there as well. Oh, it looks like Teddy's making an escape for a second. So we'll get to see him here in just a moment. But we're going to take them their food so that they can get to chewing. Now, one of the cool things that beavers do in the winter is they will actually store their food in colder water so that they can have kind of like a refrigerator that helps keep them or keep their food fresh. So they'll take trees out and they'll chew them down during times of the year where there's nice leaves on it, and then they'll drag those leafy trees to the bottom of whatever lake or pond that they've created with their dam, and they will store their food there, and it keeps it nice and fresh like a refrigerator. So they're quite the ingenious little architects that we've got in our own backyard. So pretty cool to see them up close and personal. So they're both asleep, so I don't want to wake them up. That would be kind of rude of me to do to them, as well as it's nice and toasty, and like we said, we're getting ready for a cold snap, so I don't want to interrupt their slumber and make it much colder in there than it has to be. So have you all had any questions that have popped into your head about what it is to feed our animals, what it is to be an omnivore or an herbivore and a carnivore? Or do you just have any questions about the Howell Nature Center? So while we're waiting to see if anybody pops on for some questions, thank you all for joining us for Michigan Nature Bites. This is one of our last few programs that we're going to do for this season of Nature Bites. We have 2 more episodes left. One next week is going to be Ask a Zookeeper. So Chelsea, our coordinator for Wild Wonders, is going to be meeting with you all and talking a little bit about her role. And then the week after that is going to be a Wild Superpowers. So we're going to meet some really cool superpowered animals. And then the last week of Nature Bites Season 1 is going to be picked by you all. So all of you that have been faithfully watching for the past couple of months, you will get a chance to give us some ideas of what you'd like to see on Nature Bites as well. So we had somebody ask, are we open to the public? Yes, we are. So the Howell Nature Center is open to the public right now. You are more than welcome to come walk our trails, come see our wildlife, and participate in our sledding hills. We also have a few COVID-safe events that we are planning as well, so check out those on our website for more information. All right, do we have any more questions? I don't want to cut anybody off before they are ready. Do we offer experiences for the public to feed some of our animals? We do offer volunteer positions where you can get trained to come and feed our animals, but because our animals, we need to make sure that they are staying safe and being fed properly, we don't necessarily let the public in to feed for any sort of special experiences, but we do love to have new volunteers come out and get trained. So if you're interested, we would love for you to fill out a volunteer application. All right. So thank you all for joining us. We are signing off for this week's Nature Bites, and we love seeing you all. All right, I will see you all next week. Have a good rest of your day.